Lisa here, and welcome back to the 25th Hour Podcast. Special episode today for you. It is our bottleneck episode. Here's 4 awesome, successful entrepreneurs share what they think is the one thing that's keeping them from really getting everything done that they want to each day. So listen in as Mary Cravets, Diana Dibble, Margaret Brown, and Valerie Vaughn get very real and authentic with us. Share what's going on and uncover that what they think is their bottleneck actually isn't it. Listen in.
Welcome to another episode of Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 questions or less. Today's guest is the awesome, the fabulous Mary Cravets, who's the founder of Simply Gets Clients. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks, Lisa, for having me on. I can't wait to find out my bottleneck.
I know, me too. All right. So the question for you to start is just what do you feel is getting in the way of you getting everything that you want to get done in a day?
I don't think I use my team well. I've been running my business for about 10 years now, and I came from an administrative background, so I know how to do everything. So that makes me a bit dangerous.
And so tell me more about not using your team well.
I feel like there's an evolution that I need to have to understand, like how to assign things, how to, who keeps track of it, how to give them accountability, but not lose track of things. And it's just, it feels, I'm sure this is familiar. You've heard this before, but it sounds like, or it feels like it's almost easier just to do it myself sometimes.
Okay. And is this something that, have you always felt this way? Is this something new?
No, it's new because I need to be playing a different role in my company. So it's like I could get away from it with just doing things myself. But now if I want to get to that next level, grow to $1 million company, I cannot keep doing things the way that I've been doing them. So it's just recently that this has become more obvious that it needs to be attended to.
Okay. And what are you doing right now to solve, quote unquote, this challenge?
I'm using Asana, and I'm putting tasks in there. And so, trying to stay connected to the team that way. I'm trying to remember to ask to have an outcome that I want and then give it to the team, to not just say, okay, there's a project to do and here's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's to give them the outcome and say, you guys work together to figure it out, because the figuring it out is also part of the time suck.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to remember to do that. And there was one other thing. I've moved working on developing the team. I've moved that time block into my peak attention time, which used to always be reserved for working on developing content and writing blogs and so forth. And now I've just kind of moved my team up the priority list for getting my peak attention in the morning.
Okay. And you are using Asana.
Mm-hmm.
Who's tracking the pieces and putting the pieces into Asana, and who's watching to make sure those are getting done?
Me.
Okay.
Well, and the team is also, there are some processes in place for like our speaking gigs where that process, I say, oh, I booked it, here's the contact, and then it just runs because we have a template and everything. It's just some of the day-to-day things that come up that feel like they're slipping through cracks. And I don't even know if they are slipping through the cracks. Part of it, I think, is just being able to mentally say, you know what, this is operating differently and it's actually not a problem.
There. And that right there is where I think that your bottleneck is. And I'll switch it up a little bit. So originally you thought it was just not using your team well, mm-hmm. but it could be that step back of being able to recognize what is and what is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at the pieces that aren't working and trying to fix them versus thinking that you're not using them well in all areas. Odds are you're probably using them well 80%, say we'll just pretend 80% of the time.
Okay.
Yet you're thinking about probably 70% of the work that they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, so you're thinking about, there's only 20% probably that aren't super effective and efficient, but you're thinking about way more than that.
Yeah.
And so I think the bottleneck is figuring out the piece.
Yeah. Cause I definitely, cause it's not just what's happening. It's all the things I think that could happen, should happen, will happen. And the team isn't on top of my vision for 2022 yet. And so that stresses me out.
Right. Yes. So it's just figuring out what's not working. So if we look at this in the or AWE framework that we typically use with clients, A is the awareness piece. That's what we just were doing. Digging in to solve the real problem, not the problem, because what we feel is a symptom of whatever the underlying challenge is. And so being able to dig into there, that's your A piece, that's your awareness piece. And then that W stands for work. It's okay. All right. Now you're getting that the challenge may just be figuring out what's not working versus all of it. What are the steps that you take to do that? And so one you've already taken by bumping up your time thinking through what are you doing with your team to your prime peak time hours, which for those of you who are watching, and Mary, if you're familiar with clockwork, that's the design piece in his 4Ds. And so Mike Michalowicz's 4Ds, D is design. That's the part where you're creating the structure for your team. And so you've moved that up, and that's his highest level of using your brain in his system. So you've done that. And then that E place is evaluation, is being able to look back in a week or 2 weeks and say, how do I feel about this? And what does the data say? Because we know data rules, but the gut's important too. And looking at, okay, are the pieces that I put into place, are they solving that problem? Or have they solved it and created a new challenge along the way through unintended consequences? So it's those three pieces. And you're already on track. You've started the W phase already, which puts you already head and shoulders above many people as we're digging into this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And so I feel like remembering that everything that's in here, like my brain just goes and goes and goes, and I have 500 ideas. And so I have to remember to look at the reality, the awareness. When you say awareness, I think reality. What is the reality? And the reality is we have a lot of things that are set up great. We all have to get into new habits of how to work together. But it probably isn't as big of a gap as it feels. Like the stress I'm taking on, it's probably not as big of a gap as I'm making it up to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And another piece that I'm excited about that you are taking advantage of is that time rescue analysis, because that program is a perfect place to work on the W part.
Yeah.
We found the awareness, we found the challenge. Now what's that work part of it? And that program is going to really dig into that really well. So go ahead.
I was going to say real quick that is just such a huge solution for me, because I'm very good with my time. I have my processes down. I have calendars. I'm very good with it. But because I'm moving so fast, I'm saying this in case there's anyone watching who can relate. It's like I'm moving so fast that my own perspective gets off. Even though I'm good about it, my own perspective gets a little bit off and clouded because I'm moving so quickly. It gets clouded around my time management. So being able to check in and get that outside perspective just once a quarter, I mean, it's just huge. It's so valuable, and I cannot wait. We have our appointment in a couple of weeks, but I can't wait.
I'm excited too. So we've solved your bottleneck. Yay, us. And we did it in 3 questions or less. Usually I count them out, but I forgot to do that. But we were at 3-ish, give or take a follow-up question here or there, whatever. It's a little fluid. And if you would like to participate and be a contestant on the Guest Your Productivity Bottleneck, then you just want to go to impactivestrategies.as.me and just click right there, and you can apply to be on the show too. So thanks again, Mary.
Thanks, Lisa.
Welcome, Diana, to the Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 questions or less. I'm so excited that you're here this morning.
Me too. I'm so excited. I was glad to see you.
And you. So what is it you think that prevents you from accomplishing everything that you want to do in a day?
I think the biggest thing is that since the pandemic I have much more responsibilities that I didn't have prior to because of, regulations, because of legislation that came out, reporting requirements, and just also making sure people are safe. So I'm having to learn about viruses and, masking and all sorts of stuff, plus everything else I have to do. And sometimes they compete in terms of, I have 2 things that have to be done at the same time. And I'm like, oh my God, and it's hard trying to prioritize them because they're equally important. And one was planned and one wasn't planned. So, it's the eat kind of thing that's going on.
Right. So tell me more about how often the things that weren't planned, like how often do those things happen for you?
It really depends, and it's going to sound kind of strange, but it usually happens about 2 weeks after a holiday or a big event, which is a lot of times the incubation period. But in like January, we have the end of calendar year stuff, the end of calendar quarter, and our fiscal year doesn't end until June. So January is already a busy month. But we found that like 2 weeks after Christmas, 2 weeks after New Year's, we were having things like people wanting to travel, and we'd have to come up with a plan in order to, do they have to quarantine when they get back? Are they on restriction of movement? And, people ask you a question like, I need to do something now, and we have to, figure out a plan. And it's not like we have history to go on. Because, 1, this is new, and 2, every single scenario is just different enough that I have to get the rest of my team involved so we can, brainstorm as what's the best way to accomplish, make a decision even.
Right. And so what I'm hearing you say is that these typically happen after an event or a holiday or something, and that what you've shared so far is they're related around like travel. Are there other things that you find pop up unexpected?
Well, those are the biggest things. I mean, being an operations person, I'm real process driven, real deadlines, write things down and on and on. I'm finding that I can't anticipate a lot of things, related to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Like spring break's coming up. So we know there's going to be a lot of people traveling out of town, and we're trying to keep track of what, what's going on with that. And we also know when they come back, what does that mean? But we, when you have people that are traveling overseas, I literally have to go and look up what another country is doing and requiring, so I can provide information to our staff. And that I can't plan for, because I'll get an email and saying, oh, hey, we're going to be traveling in a week. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm, a little bit controlled in that I know what's due, I know when's due, and I have enough cushion for the regular unexpected. It's the unexpected that's the wrench.
Right. Right. And so what I am going to pose to you is that at the beginning, you felt that your bottleneck was that you had, kind of conflicting priorities. Like you knew you had something due, and then something unexpected popped in and it was due at the same time. And then how do you spread your resources?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm going to say is, I think the bottleneck is you don't have enough space in your calendar in a general sense to be able to handle the unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
And so it isn't so much that the 2 things are happening, it's that you don't have the room to be able to react with ease and grace.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a rush, make a decision at the last minute. And so tell me, how does that feel? Accurate.
And it's interesting too, because I have, the low priority things that you're like, okay, I'm going to move these because they're low priority. But then you find out they've been moved for like the last 3 weeks, and now they're a priority because that cushion you had is gone. So that whole thing about not having enough space. Yeah.
Good. So yes, guess the bottleneck. Awesome. So let me walk you through the process of what we just did. So it's the AWE process. So A is awareness. So that's where we have to start. As a process person, and that is exactly the place I always want to fall back to, is we want to fix it before we identify it. Like, I would much rather give solutions.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
Right.
Much rather give solutions. Like, I don't care if it's the right problem or not. Let me just solve it. And so the A is the awareness piece. Let's step back, because if we try to solve the problem of two things happening at the same time, we're missing the problem. The problem is space in the calendar in general. And it could be space for those emerging priorities. It could be space to be creative, as we were talking about before we started recording this. It could be space for whatever. So that's your A piece. Then the W piece is the work, the phase that both you and I want to live in. Like, how do we create that? Like, what's our solution to this challenge? Like, how do we create something that works for you easily, not something that you have to make yourself do, but some sort of a structure that fits into that, whatever that could look like. And then the E phase is evaluation, which is making sure that our solution, A, solve the problem. Also making sure that the problem we've identified was really the problem. And what I find more often than not is sometimes the solution will create an unintended consequence.
Oh my God.
So like what you just said about, I'll just move these low priority items to create space. And then all of a sudden, if we think of Covey's 4 quadrants, quadrant 2 stuff, given enough time, becomes quadrant 1. And you just moved it to where it now all of a sudden became urgent. And so that's that evaluation phase. Let's make sure the solution is right, working on the right problem, and hasn't created additional problems on its own. So AWE, awareness, work, evaluation. So now you have awareness. Now it's just time to figure out what's your solution look like, and then make sure it's the right solution.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you said that, because I'm one of those, Molly always laughs. She never worries about anything because I'm already worrying about it. And I have plan B, plan C, all the way through plan AA sub 1-2.
Exactly.
All the way through. And I probably am spending a lot of time on that, as opposed to what's in front of me. What can I address now? And like, maybe push that down a little bit, because maybe I'm creating a problem by trying to figure out what the solution is to a problem that doesn't exist yet.
Right. It may never exist.
Look at that.
Look at us. We did it. If you would also like to play the Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck game, jump on impactivestrategies.as.me and you can apply to be a contestant. And if you love Diana as much as I do, because who wouldn't, you want to check out her YouTube channel, where she has tons of really cool videos. And I will put the link to her YouTube channel in the comments. Thank you, Diana.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Welcome to another episode of Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 30 questions or less. Today's guest is the awesome, the marvelous, the fabulous Margaret Brown, who is the owner of socializela.com, which is a modern marketing agency fulfilling the role of marketing for small to mid-sized businesses. Welcome, Margaret.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Super, super excited. Anytime I get to see you, it is a great day. So thank you for playing the game. So to start us off, what is your biggest challenge to get everything done each day?
Do I train someone to do this, or do I do it myself?
Ooh, okay. Train or do? Tell me more.
So I have a team, and I'm great at bringing them on, and I generally just want them to know everything that's going on in my head. And because things move so fast and so rapidly, I don't always take the time to train them properly. And I know that that's definitely something that needs to change. And so I want things off my plate, but I have to also be willing to document the process, because it's just not realistic to say, just read my mind.
Okay. And have you found that this has always been a challenge, or is this something new?
Yes. I didn't realize that until I started hiring more people, that I wasn't properly training.
Okay. And tell me, you said you didn't realize that tell me more about that.
That I didn't realize that I wasn't training properly.
Yeah. Like what was it that made you realize you weren't?
Well, because I would want things done and then it didn't get done. And then I had to backtrack, because I'm not the type of leader or boss or whatever you want to call me who is just going to play the blame game. I'm going to I know that I'm the leader of this ship. So if things are not going right, I have to look at myself first before I look at my team. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. So I would step back and say, okay, this didn't get done. Did I ever tell them how to do this? No, I didn't. And so they're picking up on these little things because, I think I hire pretty well. But you can only ask someone to do so much, as a self-starter, as a motivated individual.
Right. And like you said earlier, they can't read your brain.
That's right.
Right. They're not in there. They don't know what's going on. And so when you stated at the beginning that your bottleneck is train, like, do you train someone to do it, or do you do it yourself?
Right.
I'm going to say your bottleneck close to that, but your bottleneck is actually, what is your process to train people to come into the company? In some cases, it may be building out like an SOP or a process or a screen share or something like that. But that is for very task oriented things, very sort of.
Okay. Yes.
That's not for things where people take initiative. Like creating out what it looks like doesn't work if you want them making decisions on their own. Yeah. And so I think your actual bottleneck isn't, do you train or do it yourself? It's what's your process to bring people in so that they can, in effect, almost read your mind. Okay.
I like that. I love that. Let's do that.
Fantastic. Let's jump on that. So for those of you who are watching right now, what Margaret and I just did is the A part of the AWE process. So we just dug into awareness, which is, let's make sure we solve the right bottleneck. Because if we would have dug down the whole of, should I train or do, we could have went into, well, what's your zone of G's? Like we could have went all these places, but that's not really it. Then the W part is work. Like Margaret just said, okay, let's do that. Like, how is that possible? How do you do that? How do you create that process? And then the final piece is evaluation. Let's make sure that as we solve that problem, we didn't unintentionally create a new one. And so what's awesome and fantastic is a new group program just started called Fix Your Bottleneck in 28 Days or Less that walks through all 3 of these steps. And so for more information there, just go to impactivestrategies.com/fix. And you can reach out to Margaret for all your social media needs at socializela.com. So thank you for being a contestant, Margaret.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure today to welcome Valerie Vaughn as our guest on Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 Questions or Less. Valerie is a master M&A intermediary for Apex Business Advisors. She helps owners of privately held businesses through the process of confidentially selling their business. Thank you, Valerie, for agreeing to play today.
Sure.
Question number 1. What do you think is your biggest challenge in getting everything that you want to get done each day?
unexpected things that crop up that do need to be addressed quickly in a timely fashion. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me more.
Well, with what I do when doing business development, trying to start relationships with business owners and buyers, that can go at my pace. But when I have a transaction under contract and it's starting to move towards close, there are a lot of moving parts. And my role there is to remove obstacles. So it can just happen that I'll walk in and there will be an obstacle that I need to remove, and it needs to be removed there, or the transaction is going to fall apart and I won't get paid. So I'm highly motivated to remove the obstacle.
I could see where that would be the case. And so let's say that you do have obstacles that come up, then tell me more about what happens then the rest of your day.
Well, what I have planned gets compressed, or really what happens is it gets prioritized. Yeah, I have to look at, okay, what needs to get done today and what can be rolled to another day. So I do that.
Right. All right. So I'm going to say that your bottleneck isn't exactly that things pop up during the day that are urgent that you have to handle. I want to say that you don't have the space set in your calendar to be able to handle the things that pop up that are urgent, especially when you're moving into that place. Like, you know, when your deals heat up.
Yeah.
And so you know that once they hit that place where things are going to start to heat up, that's your opportunity to make sure you have space in your calendar to deal with those things.
I would agree with you and I would disagree with you.
Okay, tell me more.
So I build holes into my calendar because I know this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. But what happens is when one of the holes gets eaten up with something that needs to be addressed quickly and timely, and then there's another transaction I'm working on, because I'm not usually working on one at a time, and that needs my attention immediately, then I'm sunk. Yeah. Got it.
So it's not happening when you only have one transaction. You're saying it happens when you have multiple transactions at the same time?
If I'm doing my job well and luck is with me, I have multiple transactions going towards close at any given time. So okay. What happens is I build a hole into my schedule thinking I'll have one crisis, call it that. And what happens is I have more than one crisis in a given day. And then all the time is eaten up, all the grace period.
Right.
So then I start to feel a bit frantic. But I have gotten very good, and probably because I worked with Lisa Crowley Malice of Impactive Strategies. Do you know her?
I've met her once or twice.
Yeah, but I have gotten very good at realizing that it's very important that I not overwork, because if I overwork one day, I'm wiped out the next. So I need to draw a cutoff line. And that's where the reprioritization comes in, to figure out what's of highest priority right now and what can be, because not everything is at the same level of priority.
Right, right. So here's another question then for you. Do you have a backup resource, either to help when your deals, like, are there multiple people potentially on a deal to help if you have multiple deals heating up at the same time, or do you have a backup on some of that other stuff that gets bumped?
Sometimes there are multiple people working on a transaction, and then, I can reach out for some assistance from my colleague. Sometimes there are not. So I have to handle it all. But with respect to backup resource, I do work with a virtual assistant through another Nalbo sister, lead virtual assistants. And I have been trying more than ever to delegate this year because I've set a very large goal for myself, and I realize that I have to do things differently if I'm going to achieve that goal. Now, what I do is parts of it are highly confidential, so I also have to consider that. What can I delegate that's not highly confidential? But
right. All right. So based on all this new info, I'm going to tweak the bottleneck because you do have room set in your schedule when like you have your plan A. So if I have one challenge or one obstacle, I can remove it. And so I'm going to then suggest that there's some sort of easy-ish plan B that you can access when needed. So whether that's setting the VA up that she can do a couple different tasks that she may or may not be doing already, or whether it's already having a conversation with someone else who's with you on the transaction or something so that you have a little, the phrase that I've been hearing so much the last couple of weeks is space and grace. So you have a little space and grace.
Yeah.
When you get there, because you're doing all the right things. You know, my workday is ending, even if I'm not getting, even if everything doesn't get done, I'm just going to reprioritize. Not everything is top priority. You have white space or buffer space in your calendar. So then is that what's your plan B?
Yeah.
Yeah. How does that feel?
Feels good. I'll just have to figure out the plan B a little bit.
Right. It's figuring out what's, it's looking at what's the plan B. So for those of you watching right now, the process Valerie and I just went through is AWE, awareness. We dug into the bottleneck. So she identified what she thought it was. I identified what I thought it was. And we came up with a third option. So, which is very typical of how the awareness process works, is you just keep digging until you find that place. You're like, yeah, that does feel like it's the right way. And then the W phases work, which is where we started briefly to brainstorm. Maybe it's the VA who has something, maybe it's another one of the partners or whatever it is, but whatever could that plan B look like? And then finally it's evaluation. And Valerie will easily be able to go and evaluate this in a couple of weeks, looking back and saying, okay, how many times did I have to move things? How many times did I have to reprioritize things? How many times did it work the way I wanted it to work? So that's the AWE process. Valerie, thank you. If you have a business and you are thinking about selling your business, I know the perfect person that you can reach out to. Her name's Valerie Vaughn. So you want to reach out to her at Apex Business Advisors. And if you suspect that you have a bottleneck, but you're not exactly sure how to fix it, go to impactivestrategies.com/fix. And there's a 28-day program right on that page that we will be able to help you figure out what's your bottleneck and how do you solve it. Thank you, Valerie.
You're welcome, Lisa. It was a pleasure.
I so love doing these episodes and hope that you enjoyed listening in. 2 questions for you. Question number 1, what's your takeaway? What action will you take from listening to the 4 bottlenecks? Send an email to lisa@impactivestrategies and put action in the subject line. Let me know. Second thought for you is, if you're wondering what your productivity bottlenecks are costing you, go to impactivestrategies.com/cost to find out.